Hello dear viewers and welcome to another episode of Dzairnews Guest, a show where we highlight trending stories on the national and international scenes. In this episode we'll go through the Algerian-Kenyan bilateral ties which date back decades. Diplomatic relations between the two nations are known to be solid as well. Kenya recently opened its embassy in Algiers, and Algeria is represented in Kenya by its embassy in Nairobi. Trade and commercial exchanges between Kenya and Algeria are rapidly increasing in different economic sectors at a time when the world is undergoing an economic crisis due to oil plunging prices. What are these economic sectors? What is the solution to the world oil crisis? And away from all this, what are the cultural and social ties between Algerian and Kenyan communities? All of these questions and others are going to be answered in a one-on-one interview with Moila Mashira, Kenyan Ambassador to Algeria. Hello, sir, and thank you for accepting our humble invitation.
I'm privileged, Mustapha. Thank you for inviting me.
You're welcome. So, sir, Kenya's embassy in Algiers was opened in early 2015. With the establishment of an embassy here in Algiers and Algeria having an embassy in Nairobi, how would that impact on the two nations' bilateral ties?
Thank you very much, Mustapha, and I'm glad to be hosted by such a distinguished news house, Dzairnews. Thank you very much. I'm also very privileged to serve my country, Kenya, and its people in this wonderful, friendly and brotherly nation of Algeria. And having been here for more than a year, I want to say how much I've enjoyed my stay here. And first, I am Kenya's first resident ambassador in Algeria. So
very good.
That I feel it's a great honor for me. These have been bestowed by my government. The opening of the Kenyan embassy in Algeria in February 2015 was officiated by my president, His Excellency Honorable Uhuru Kenyatta. Yeah. So first, that tells you the importance in which, as a country, we have attached to it. That my president did open the embassy on during his state visit, and the state visit was the first exchange between the two countries. So that itself talks a great deal about the importance we attach to it. Secondly, the opening of the Kenyan embassy in Algeria comes with a confirmation of our foreign policy being African-centered. Okay. The Kenya government has taken a strong pro-African foreign policy approach, in which we are seeking to expand our diplomatic missions in Africa. We are developing our trade ties stronger with Africa than before, under the our commitment as a country to the intra-African trade and the African integration agenda. Perhaps I should just elaborate a bit by saying that we see our relations with Algeria at three levels.
Exactly.
One is that Algeria and Kenya have a bilateral commitment to strengthen government-to-government and, more importantly, people-to-people relations. That is the first level. The second level is that Kenya and Algeria are pillars of Africa's integration agenda. The two countries representing regions, being leaders in their respective areas and regions, Kenya, of course, in the eastern and Algeria in the northern, have a common position in fast-tracking the integration of Africa, making the African continent open for business, making ease of movement between African people, making solutions possible for African challenges to development. That's the second one. The third one is that in our foreign policy, in our relations with Algeria, we seek to strengthen, to grow the role of Africa in global affairs. Africa is rising, not just economically, but from a political perspective, from international peace and security level, for the issue of dealing with the challenges to sustainable development, Africa has a role in the global setup, and Kenya and Algeria are once again united in this perspective. So the opening of our embassy here in Algeria, and me as Kenya's ambassador in Algeria, these three are core pillars of my mandate and the function of the embassy in Algeria.
Perfect. That's great. Moving on to another story. In December 2013, and during his 5 visit to Algiers, the Speaker of the National Assembly of Kenya, Mr. Justin Muturi, met with Prime Minister Abdelmalek Salal in Algiers, and they have agreed upon creating a commission aimed at boosting bilateral ties between the two nations. How will this commission really help boost the bilateral ties between Kenya and Algeria in all different sectors of endeavor?
Thank you, Mustapha. Just to update you, a lot has happened since December 2013. We have had an exchange of higher level visits.
Yes.
I've just mentioned the state visit by His Excellency Honorable Uhuru Kenyatta in February 2015. Before that, we had the exchange of the speakers of the two houses between the two countries. They have visited the two capitals. My minister, Ambassador Amina Mohammed, the Cabinet Secretary for Foreign Affairs and International Trade, visited in December 2014, and that is when they signed the agreement establishing the Joint Commission for Cooperation. The Joint Commission for Cooperation is the pillar that enables countries to develop diplomatic ties.
Perfect.
The signing of the Joint Commission for Cooperation was endorsed during the state visit, and since then we have exchanged various bilateral arrangements with Algeria. We have actually signed during the state visit by His Excellency Uhuru Kenyatta. We signed 3 bilateral arrangements. One, of course, is in the area of cooperation in gas, oil, and power.
Yes.
Which Algeria has a great experience, and we learn as also as a prospecting oil-producing country. Exactly. We have a lot of lessons and experience to learn from Algeria in that regard. We signed also an MOU on a memorandum of understanding in cooperation in diplomatic training, again to strengthen that partnership. But more importantly, we have now exchanged agreements in bilateral trade. We have exchanged agreements in the bilateral air service agreement that will allow the two countries, the airlines, Kenya Airways and Algeria, to explore direct businesses between Nairobi and Algeria.
Perfect.
We have had our chambers of commerce initial and memorandum of understanding to bring the business community together. We expect to fast track the signing of a range of bilateral arrangements, including in natural resource conservation and management, in tourism development, and more importantly, in higher education and scientific fields, in which Kenya is very grateful to be receiving scholarship from the Algerian government. At the moment, we have about 50 Kenyan students in Algeria.
50 Kenyan students?
Yes, in various...
Currently enrolling at Algerian
in Algeria under the scholarship in very niche areas of national development like petrochemical engineering, medicine, civil engineering. And we intend even to grow this and discuss possibility of including other areas like aeronautics, engineering, and the likes. So it's the Joint Commission for Cooperation is going to hold its first session in the very near future. Kenya is to host the first session in which we expect to conclude all these agreements and work on the implementation framework for growing our economic and trade relations beyond the strong and political diplomatic ties we have.
Perfect. And still with the economy and business related news, the Algerian Business Forum, also known as the FC here in Algeria, is expanding its activities internationally and abroad. Do you think that the business climate prevailing in Kenya will attract the FCE to establish maybe a representative bureau in Kenya that would lead and pave the way to improve economic and commercial exchanges between the two nations?
Well, Mustapha, I think the best way to answer this question is by just giving you a synopsis of the Kenya's foreign policy.
Yes.
Our foreign policy is built on 5 pillars.
5 pillars.
One is peace and security.
Indeed.
We are committed to promotion of peace and security, not just within the East African, the Horn of Africa, the
entire continent,
Africa, but in the entire world. We are very active in the United Nations peacekeeping forces in order to show our commitment to peace and security. Secondly, is economic diplomacy.
Yes.
And this is where the issue of the Federation of Chief Entrepreneurs Executive, FEC, come in. We are looking at promoting Kenya across 4 important pillars in economic diplomacy. One is to develop our traditional markets, to develop more market in where we've been exporting.
Yes.
2 is to create new markets, go beyond the traditional markets to emerging economies.
Innovate.
Algeria is one of them, for example.
Nice.
The third one is to attract foreign direct investment into Kenya. Again, FCE comes in this area. We are looking forward to work with FCE to bring foreign direct investment to Kenya. The fourth one is what we call a transfer of technology. Algeria has made some tremendous progress in various areas. I've traveled a bit to see factories in what we call light manufacturing, particularly in the agro-based, in the processing of wheat, for example, even in the value additioning processes for some of the products that you import to the country. So again, bringing in the transfer of technology. And under the economic pillar, we look forward to provide a framework in which foreign-based business organization can invest directly in Kenya as foreign companies, but as well to do through joint ventures, creating win-to-win partnership with Kenyan business organization and companies. In the near future, we are going to roll out what we call a cross-sector promotional program. One of the areas that we are looking at is energy and mining. Algeria has great potential in this area, and Kenya has very, very attractive investment opportunities in this area as well. On areas of agro-business and light manufacturing, value additioning processes, we are looking at ways where we can encourage Algerian business people to visit Kenya and partner with Kenyan to produce commodities and export products for the Algerian, which meet the specification of the Algerian market. Kenya is the largest exporter of black tea. Really has a great opportunity of importing that product because more and more Algerians now are getting to be familiar with the black tea. We are one of the biggest exporters of cut flowers, for example. There are a lot of byproducts that we can look into in this area in partnership as well. Coffee as well. A great product of Kenya. So the FCE is definitely welcome. I look forward to interacting with the Chief Executive Officer and work out in specific details on how to partner in this area. I must insist that exchange of business visits is very important in opening up avenues for discussions on business and investment.
That's really great. In terms of business, doing business notably in the African continent. Nairobi is the safari capital of the world, where the Masai Mara and the Serengeti National Park are widely known. How has tourism impacted on Kenya's national economy?
That's a very, very important question to me, and I'm really glad that you raised up because as a Kenyan diplomat, like all of us, my colleagues around the world, you cannot discuss Kenya without talking about tourism.
Exactly.
And the same thing, you cannot talk about tourism anywhere in the world without talking about safari.
Indeed.
Because the safari, which is a Kenyan word for holiday or travel, is actually the ultimate holiday. Last year, Kenya was voted the best safari experience.
Amazing.
In the Global World Tourism Awards. Kenya is the best safari visit destination you can experience.
With how many visitors?
Last year, I think our highest number of arrivals we registered in between 2011 and 2012, which is about 2 million. which is about 2 million. It's still too low given our potential, but there are many problems that have affected tourism in Kenya, which have nothing to do with Kenya. The issue of international terrorism, for example, that makes countries give what you call travel warnings, about alerts about where to visit, where not to visit. But that I leave it for a discussion another day. Let me just say that why is Nairobi the capital city of the world?
Indeed.
The tourism, the safari city of the world. I say for many reasons, but one, Nairobi is the only capital city in the world that has an open national park.
Not unlike other countries.
That
for instance,
when you are landing, preparing for landing in Jomo Kenyatta International Airport, the last 20 kilometers of your before arrival, you are flying over Nairobi National Park.
I mean, you might see lions probably.
You do, of course. If you take time off and have 1 hour of drive from the airport, you'll enjoy. That's one reason. Number two is the Masai Mara phenomenon, the wild beast migration, the 8th wonder of the world. Hundreds of thousands of animals, of wild beasts crossing a crocodile-infected river. It is an experience that you cannot have anywhere. The August-September period is when we have the wild beast migration across the Mara River, and Masai Mara becomes a sea of activities. You just have an amazing. The final issue is the diversity. From the blue deep sea waters of Indian Ocean on Diani Beach, which again, the Kenyan the hotels and resorts along the Mombasa South were voted some of the best last year in the Global Tourism Awards again. From the high mountains of Mount Kenya, it is possibly the only mountain in Equator which has snow at the top. So you can experience mountain sport like nowhere else, very unique. The culture, the tradition and the diversity of the Kenyan people, 42 tribes of varied cultures and traditions, from the Arab leaning, the Swahili coastal, to the Maasai people, the indigenous population inside the hinterland, the Lake Turkana where the oldest human remains are found. This is part of magical Kenya.
Exactly.
So truly, Nairobi is the safari capital of the world.
Truly, Kenya is magical.
And just now, Mustapha, you mentioned about Serengeti. Serengeti is the border park that links Kenya and Masai Mara. It links together with Masai Mara. And the movement of wild beasts across the Mara River is associated with Serengeti because that is the hinterland of the wild beast migration.
Yes.
But what is important is that the East African community, the EEAC, has now a common tourist visa.
Nice.
So when you come to Kenya, you experience, and you travel through Tanzania, you can go to Uganda, you can go to Rwanda without requiring to process any other visa. So movement between the countries has been made easy. We are doing this not just for tourism, but also for investment and economic ties.
Perfect, great. Well, we in our conversation we mentioned a couple of times wildlife, lions, and all the beauty that Kenya has to offer to its foreigner visitors. In the past few years, we've witnessed a phenomena of wildlife hunting in the African continent. How is Kenya contributing to eradicating these rapid expanding phenomena?
Mustapha, that is a very important issue, and to a greater extent too very sad. Wildlife poaching is one of the problems facing the tourism sector in Kenya. Kenya is a member of the Convention on International Convention on Endangered Species, CITES. We are also the headquarters of United Nations Environmental Program. We are very committed to wildlife conservation. Poaching has dented a great of our tourism strength. Take a good example of elephant and rhino poaching in Africa. This is challenging. It's actually challenging because for you to grow tourism, you must have wildlife.
Yeah, indeed.
And poaching is not only an economic crime against Kenya's interest, or for that matter, African countries' interest. It is an economic crime it's a crime against nature. We ought to enjoy the wildlife, but we also have an obligation to protect, conserve, and to manage.
Indeed.
There are natural ways where nature, the ecosystem, develop and prune itself and rejuvenates and renew itself. But when human beings get to be part of it, killing for superstition of curative contribution of, for example, a rhino head, really, there is greater value for that rhino as an element of the ecosystem than for poaching purposes. So as a country, we have taken very strong measures. We have strengthened our Kenya Wildlife Services. We have reformed and strengthened our foreign service, forestry service. And now we are looking at issues of conservation of wildlife, not just from an economic part, but from a security point of view as well.
Indeed. Briefly, sir, do you see that do you see a future for Kenya when a tourism will outstrip primary production as tea, coffee, and become a primary income source for the Kenyan economy, in brief words?
It is possible. First, because tourism is within the culture and the traditions and the nature of Kenya.
Yeah.
So it is possible. A growth of market will propel tourism to be a very, in fact, as it is now, is a very big income contributor of foreign service exchange.
Exactly.
But yes, it has the capacity. It will require a lot of marketing. It will require a long of exploring new markets, and that's why we are in Algeria. We are welcoming Algerians to test the real African safari, to be part of this of growing Africa ties. On the other side, tea and coffee are traditional Kenyan export.
Yes.
We, as a government, are not just committed to promote tea and coffee around the world, but the nature of the country itself, the volcanic soil and fertile regions of our country, highlands, make tea and coffee production a natural activity. So yes, I see myself, the better option is to grow both tourism and agricultural prowess, to both conjoin and grow our economy. So we are looking at tourism and export of our products as pillars of our economic diplomacy. Promoting Kenya, they are within that aspect of a magical Kenya.
Indeed, sir. Now let's move on to another story, which is a worrying fact, which is the worrying fact of tourism and its negative impact, as you know, on the African continent. We've seen in the last few months, let's say days, yesterday the Ivory Coast, you know, witnessed the gunman shot a couple of foreign Western visitors who were in Ivory Coast. How is Kenya contributing to eradicating terrorism, which is expanding in the African continent?
Thank you, Mustapha. First, I see terrorism as not just expanding in Africa, but it's a growing global challenge. It's an emerging international
but notably
problem.
In the African continent. I know it's an international.
It's an international problem. And when you look at the statistics of development of terrorism and extreme activities in the world, Africa is only having its share. It is happening around the world. Every part of the region of the world is experiencing it. How is Kenya contributing to the fight against terrorism? Let me just first say, from our first experience of the 1998 bombing of the U.S. Embassy in Nairobi, to the recent very atrocious attack on Kenyan students in Garissa, we have experienced an expansion around the world of extremism in various forms.
Indeed.
And what the world is countering now is actually armed international terrorism.
Yeah.
We have a situation in Somalia, the Al-Shabaab terrorism group.
Yep.
which is an affiliate of other international terrorism group like Al-Qaeda, the Boko Haram in the Western Africa. We are members of the African Union, and the African Union Peace and Security Architecture has a provision for participation of African countries in the UN support system. For example, we are now contributing troops in the fight against Al-Shabaab under the AMISOM, that's an African mission in Somalia. We are the front line. We are being a neighboring state to Somalia. We are supporting the Somalian government as well to put in structures for Somalis to govern themselves. But I must say that the final war on terrorism has to be won from the international level. International community has to stand strong and be able to address the social and economic factors that project and promote the validity of extremism around the world. Extremism is not a religion issue. It's a choice that individuals make to form and hit against the human nature. And I think we as a country, Kenya, we are very committed to do our part, not just within the East African, addressing the issue of Al-Shabaab in Somalia, but also in the international dialogue on how to deal with terrorism.
Unfortunately, sir, we are running out of time. It was a great pleasure having you with us as a guest. Thank you so much once again. And ladies and gentlemen, we come to the end of this episode of Dzairnews Guest. Thank you for watching and goodbye.